I believe this one was a fan favorite back when I posted the deck list and gameplay, but I've gone ahead and updated Beast and Shadow, hence the 2.0, for the December 2023 metagame in Lorcana because I've been seeing an increase in aggro decks, and the rise of the Amber Steel Flute deck on Pixelborn has kind of signaled to me that this deck might have some competitive play in order to deal with those threats. Now, if you look at this deck list, it's pretty straightforward. It's fairly consistent. You've got 3 or 4 of every single card. There's no kind of one-offs or inconsistencies that you're really going to run into. The uninkable count is only 15, so you shouldn't really be bricking, but even if you do have the small steel Tinkerbell to filter cards, hopefully. And this deck just basically locks things down. It is usually an auto win against any kind of aggro, and you do have the Benja to help deal with flutes if you run into that as well. It is overall just a very versatile deck. So we're going to quickly run through the deck list, and then we're going to jump into some matches where I can show you just kind of how the deck works. So starting off, we only play 4 1-drops in Captain Hooks. These are still very good because even late game they can trade up as a 3-2 and just even put the finishing touches on an opponent's character in order to banish it. Robin Hood is extremely good because it synergizes early game with Ring the Bell and late game with the Cheshire Cat from the Shadows. The small Cheshire Cat is obviously the shift target for the big Cheshire Cat. The Benja is just item removal. You can opt to play 4 of this if you want, but I think 3 is enough because your opponent's likely not going to see 4 flutes in a game, for example, and so seeing 1 or 2 Benja in order to banish 1 or 2 flutes should be enough to slow them down. In Emerald and Steel, this color combination has access to a total of 8 small Tinkerbells, and so we were playing all 8. They are relevant in and of themselves because the Emerald one has evasive, so it can put on a lot of lore pressure, and the small one helps you filter cards, as well as all 8 of them are targets for Big Tink, which again synergizes so well with the deck because you ping damage on something, and then your Relentless Beast readies itself. Moving on to the 5 slot, we've got Beast Tragic Hero. Deservingly, probably the most expensive legendary in Rise of the Floodborn because it is a card draw engine in and of itself. It does need to survive though, but it is very, very strong, and if it goes unanswered, you are netting advantage for sure off this card. Of course, the next thing is essentially what the deck is built around in Beast Relentless. This thing is a pseudo Scar Vicious Cheater in the fact that if your opponent has a bunch of exerted stuff on board and this card hit the field the turn before, it can crash into things and keep readying itself. It just doesn't have Rush, so you can't play it and use it right away, which is a pretty big deal. If it had Rush, it would be absolutely broken and it would make Scar irrelevant. So this card can help you deal with the opponent's board. It can close out games by questing for a bunch, and again, I've posted a previous video where I've shown that this card can quest for like 10 or 12 in a single turn. It's absolutely insane. If this hits the board and it goes unanswered and you have somewhat of a board set up, with the actions that we play, you can likely ready this thing up a bunch of times and just quest for game when it hits the board. And then our shift targets here are Big Tinkerbell, which, you know, nothing needs to be said there. It's Tinkerbell. It's like literally the best super from the first chapter. It's still doing work in Rise of the Floodborn's meta. And then for Cheshire Cat from the Shadow, this card is your late game stabilizer. It combos with any of your actions to ping damage on something and then banish it, and it combos with the Robin Hood as well. And then moving on to the actions here, we've got 4 Ring the Bell, again just comboing with the other actions. If you have a mid game or late game threat on board, or your opponent does, that is, all you need to do is put a little bit of damage on it and then ring the bell it away. And I've done that a few times, and it's really helped me stabilize early game, mid game, and late game. Only 3 smash. You might want to play 4 because it's inkable, but 3 is fine here. 4 let the Storm Rage on. Because you play like a 10 3-drops, I thought that 4 of this card would be useful. In playtesting, I think 3 might be a better choice, just because seeing multiples of this in your hand, the fact that it only deals 2 damage, can be a bit of a drawback, but it does replace itself. But again, if it makes you not regain tempo, it can be a detriment. 3, Strength of the Raging Fire. Again, this card you might want to cut to 2. It's usually not taking out a threat unless, again, you're dealing with aggro, which, you know, Pinocchios and Maleficents and Lilos and stuff like that, they're dying to everything else in the deck anyways. You don't really need this card for that, but you're likely not banishing something with this card. You're just putting damage on something so that you can banish it with like a Ring the Bell or a Cheshire Cat later on, or you're just using it really, really early to deal with aggro. So again, something you might want to cut to 2. for a whole new world, and I'm a little torn on this one because there's been instances where my opponent is just trying to keep up with me because I'm clearing their board, that I actually don't want a whole new world. Then I draw into a second one and it's kind of just a brick in my hand, so I might opt out of the whole new worlds and put in Beast Mirror. It will help me decrease the uninkable count and give me something that can also synergize with the advantage I get off of Beast Tragic Hero. So there is that to consider. And then only 3 Grab Your Sword. So again, if you want to cut the Let the Storm Rage on for another Grab Your Swords, that might be another option as well. So that's the deck list. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's go ahead and jump into some matches so we can see how the deck plays and functions. So this was an earlier iteration of the deck where I think I was running like Chief Bogo and Cinderella's, and I've obviously drastically changed the list. This is when I was testing out these cards instead of like the Cheshire Cat package, and I just think Cheshire Cat has way more value. Anyways, the reason I'm including this clip is because you're gonna just see how insane this deck is against aggro. And this was like the fastest clip I had. So it was like a 1-minute match. Yeah, you can see the opponent starts off with a Maleficent. We also went first, which is just, you know, instant GG's. The opponent is attempting to set up a Pinocchio, a Maleficent. They probably have some bounce cards in hand. But once they see this setup going, like, there's nothing you can do. Even if you have a Befuddle to bounce back the Robin Hood, like, I'm just going to replay it, and you just can't get it off the field fast enough before it just completely decimates your board. Like, the Robin Hood in and of itself is just an OTK against these aggro decks. And then couple that with all of the actions that you have. As you can see here, this opponent already gave up. They didn't even ink last turn. They played a Pinocchio. They said whoops. They know it's over, and I think shortly after this they end up just scooping it up right here. You can't blame them, right? There's nothing they can do. So let's get on to some more serious matches. This match, I just want to show you how the deck plays out tempo-wise and why you may want to consider using Beast Mirror instead of a whole new world, which is uninkable and it is unfortunate, but having it in your opening hand and using it as a disruption spell is really, really effective. Right now you can see we're essentially trying to play on curve. We've got our hook on turn 1 that slowed down the opponent because anything they play from turns 1 to 3 likely does not want to trade into a hook. And on turn 4, the opponent does end up shifting Tinkerbell, which takes out our hook here. And I make an odd play just because seeing the opponent on 3 cards, I imagine that they have some songs that they might want to sing with that Tinkerbell. So I invest heavily using Strength of the Raging Fire and Ring the Bell to get the Tinkerbell off the field. The opponent plays a Spellbook on turn 5, which is a very weak play, and they forget to quest with it to get the lore. So I just let them know, whoops. We drop a Robin Hood here, and we're putting pressure on them with the 2 lore Cheshire Cat. The opponent drops an Elsa, which is really interesting here. I've actually been experimenting with Elsa in my Ruby Amethyst build, but I think I've opted for the new contract card instead. I opt to quest with the Robin Hood here, and in hindsight, you know, getting the 1 lore isn't really that significant, and it plays into exactly what you see here. A Grab Your Swords into a challenge from the Elsa, which completely wipes out my board. Now what looked like a decent position for me has been completely flipped. Having the Robin Hood on board wouldn't have really made a big difference for board presence because this Elsa is kind of tanky at 2-3, but I didn't know my opponent was on those 1-drop Maleficents, and as you can see here, that card is a threat to me. Thankfully, I do have the Grab Your Swords. I'm going to go ahead and ink the Cheshire Cat here and then play the Grab Your Swords just to kind of keep up on ink, accidentally use the Tinkerbell effect to draw and end up discarding the hook. But the reason I'm playing so aggressively is because I have the whole new world, but like I mentioned, do I really want to let my opponent draw 7 new cards? And not being able to sing a whole new world really sucks because it puts me behind on tempo. So I don't really gain any advantage because the opponent has a spellbook that quests for 1, which again, in my opinion, kind of weak. So I'm not too concerned about it, but all I have is a Tinkerbell, and using that board presence to justify hard casting a whole new world there isn't the best. Whereas if I had Beast Mirror, I think I would have been in a much better shape because now I've also given my opponent 7 new resources. However, can I utilize my resources that I picked up with a whole new world better? And right now I think that I'm in a decent position, knowing that Amethyst, Steel Amethyst doesn't really have big board wipes for big characters. Like, they have to Grab Your Swords, but they struggle to deal with big threats sometimes. And yeah, there's the Grab Your Swords. The opponent goes wide on their board, and I'm just like, well, my Tinkerbell absolutely decimates this board. given that I have to shift it onto an already damaged Tinkerbell, I'm like, let me just trade up because the opponent might have more pinging damage spells. So I opt to just wipe the whole board from the opponent, crash into their Tinkerbell, and use the 2 damage effect to take out the goat, and then quest with Cheshire Cat here. So I'm clawing back advantage, and because I'm on 9 ink, because I continue to ink every turn, I believe, I'm able to also drop this beast, and now my opponent is in a tough spot because either they try to develop their board or they try to deal with my beast, which is going to draw me an extra card. And this is what I talked about at the start of the deck list video, or deck list portion of the video, in that the beast, once it's on field, can just generate you so much advantage. It's actually insane. My opponent reveals some interesting tech. My guess is they're running small and big Facilier so that they can crash ghosts and get them back to hand, which is really, really interesting and a concept that I wouldn't mind experimenting with myself. But with the opponent not having access to card draw, probably not having their own whole new world, they did discard one off of my whole new world. They really suffered to develop a board here, and now you can see off double beast and our draw, we draw 3 cards in total. We're just going to go ahead and drop this Tinkerbell, which synergizes amazingly well with the Cheshire Cat because now we can tap and banish. Not that we need to, but just showcasing what we can do. Robin Hood taking out the Jafar, and it's basically GG's. Again, the opponent's on 1 card, they're going to draw 1 for turn. There's nothing in Steel Amethyst, even an Elsa top deck here won't save them, so I just give them the well played, and we're about to wrap up this match. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you again for watching. Stay tuned for more gameplay with this deck because I think it's really fun and I want to show off more of the relentless combos, but I thought this video would be good to show you how this deck could be competitive even when you don't get your ideal combo state. And as you can see here, you have a number of different ways to develop your board and stay in control of the match. And of course, you know, depending on the matchups, like if you're playing against Ruby, you want to play around the be prepared, etc. But I'm just kind of showing what the deck can do here to a certain extent. We finally get the Benja to take out the spellbook here, but yeah, in the end we clutch it out. So again, thank you again for watching. If you made it this far, Quantum is out.